This is the Giraffes Don't Eat Steak podcast, a show that brings you marketing stories, tips, hints, and much more. A treat for those who want to succeed in business or marketers who just want to learn.
Hello, Alex.
Hi, Erica. How are you doing?
I am good. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Very well.
I am like a little child in Christmas today because I have managed to get to our podcast studio someone who I greatly admire and follow, Bruce McKinnon. Hey, welcome, Bruce.
Good to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Welcome, Bruce.
So, Alex, you know that I quote Bruce often. In brand strategy, Bruce is my go-to guru on all things brand strategy. I've worked with him with clients in developing brand strategy, and I have his book, which I probably have memorized. So I thought, hey, marketing, brand strategy, this is the place I'd love Bruce to come. And he said yes. So, Bruce, so excited to have you here.
Well, I'll have to pick you up on one thing immediately. And that is that I often describe brand strategy as not part of marketing. Because the job of a brand strategy is to represent the whole organization. So it's a whole company strategy. And yes, of course, we're often brought in by the marketing team. And a lot of the language and obviously a lot of the channels that we use will be marketing. But your brand cannot survive in a marketing department. Yeah, it has to exist and be celebrated and be used across the organization, whether that's, the HR team knowing the right values for the people they want to hire, to the product team knowing exactly the kind of proposition that we're developing, to the sales team knowing exactly what the key messages should be, on the RFP, to the PR team knowing what the elevator pitch is. So, but it's lovely to be here, and I'm excited about what we're going to be talking about over the next 20 minutes to 1 hour.
So let's start with that, Bruce. What is a brand strategy?
It's very simple. It's a framework to make good choices. Is it red paint or is it blue paint? They both cost the same. So what's it going to be? A brand strategy is a way of being able to sort of think about how you want to articulate your brand, how you want to articulate your business before you spend a penny, before you spend a dime. What normally happens is, particularly sort of smaller businesses, they'll sit down at the web agency, whatever, and the designer will say, well, what's the brand proposition, or what are your values, or, what's your first key message? And you'll turn around and you say, I don't know, what do you think? And suddenly you've handed over the reins of the most important part of your business to may well be a very good designer, but they're not a strategist. Nor do they know your business as well as you do. So I always say, look, that's your job. Yeah, as the brand owner, as the business owner, it's your job to make choices about how you're going to define your brand, how you're going to spend your resources. And a brand strategy is a very straightforward way of being able to help you make good choices about your brand. I finished.
That's so powerful. Mic drop. Okay, we can end now. What do you think, Alex?
Oh, well, I mean, I just kind of got stuck on the part where you were saying that you asked a designer to design something and the designer asks you what the brand proposition is, and it just blew my mind, because I thought that I think that happens more than you would like to think. And I would like to say I've never been guilty of that.
Sure, you haven't.
I've seen it happen. I've seen it in smaller forms as well, I guess.
Yeah.
Not even that, just when there is a strategy, people falling out of line from that strategy, saying, you've got a clear brand proposition, you've got a clear message, you've got your, what your pain points are and your solutions are to that. But I think sometimes I have seen, as I said, people falling out of line of that, and then listening to a designer or something like that who says, actually, I think this is better, and you haven't really thought about it. They haven't thought about it. They don't know the business. They haven't done any customer research or anything like that, and then suddenly you're running down the wrong lane.
Well, it's like reinventing the wheel, isn't it? Let's just invent the wheel. One wheel. We've invented it. You don't need to go and reinvent it. You don't need to go and do a new brand proposition or new key messages or new values, because we've done it, and we did it in a way that was collaborative. So my whole thing with the brand arrow, which is my framework, is that it is a collaborative experience. So you're drawing on the whole team's experience to be able to define your brand strategy. A, because you need that knowledge, because your brand strategy is about your brand, your business, and two, it delivers ownership. So suddenly it's not, the marketing director scampering back down from the ivory tower saying, here it is. You've created something together. And if you create something, you own it. And then you're much more willing to be able to support it and encourage people to use it and grow it. So yeah, I think another mic drop moment for me normally is when I do a lot of workshops with an organization called Vistage, which is a CEO mentoring network, mainly for SMEs, businesses. And the mic drop moment is the brand strategy's number one audience is you. It's your team. Because if your team get your brand, your customers will get your brand. But if your team don't get your brand, what hope do your customers have? And I have countless examples of going around. I mean, I can tell us, I don't know how much time we have, but I lots of stories about going around the room and getting 15 different versions of the same brand from the leadership team, and you don't need 15 versions, you just need one version. So anyhow.
I mean, that rings very true with me. I mean, one of the most important parts, I think, that of the work that Eric and I do is the upfront work we do with the client, and it's bringing the team together, sort of the key stakeholders from each department, let's say, and getting their version of the brand. What does this brand mean to you? What are the benefits of the product or service, and what pain points do your customers feel? And it is really, really interesting because you do get different perspectives.
Sure. You want those different perspectives because you want the richness. I'm not a big fan of simplicity. I'm a fan of being straightforward. Because if you try and simplify things, you often lose the nuances. You lose the richness, you lose the differentiation. And we know, don't we, that meaningfully differentiated brands are more successful. There's just been a huge study by Kantar. I think it's the world's largest ever piece of brand research. And they looked at 10.6 billion data points across the world in terms of how brands interact with customers. And they came up with some very startling, but not surprising results, mainly speaking that brands that are meaningfully differentiated, they're differentiated in a way that is credible and ownable and believable and authentic by the company that delivers the brand. They can charge twice as much. They're 7 more times likely to grow. It's phenomenal, and it's quite nice as a brand strategist to have something that you can point to say, well, if you don't have to listen to me, just go and have a look at this wonderful piece of work by Kantar.
Yeah, I mean, in today's world, let's be honest, there's not very many products or services that do not have a huge number of competitors.
Sure.
So I don't know, a silly example, but let's say you make socks. Socks are socks. They do the same thing. They go over your feet, keep them warm, make them more comfortable in your shoes. But what is, like you're talking about, what is the nuance that makes your sock more appealing to your audience than the other million companies that sell socks? That's the nuance of it, the brand story.
Well, it just so happens I have just launched a new sock brand, so I can tell you.
There you go.
No, I'm kidding. No, I think you're absolutely right. And funny enough, working with a client at the moment, and they've got a beautifully articulated identity, and they have a very compelling headline on their homepage. But that's the extent to which that headline has any meaning within the company.
Yeah.
And the job that I've been brought in to do is to say, we just need to be able to create something that's believable, that our team can believe it, because it's true, that we could then use to differentiate our brand against competitors. It's not about headlines. Yeah, it's about, I actually call it the brand positioning. It's the DNA that runs through everything that you do. That single thread that wherever you look, whether it's in the sales team, product team, HR, wherever it is, you see evidence of this thread. And once you get to your brand positioning, which doesn't happen like that, you need to go through a process in order to get to that single word positioning, that the DNA, then it just releases you. Yeah, because then it's the catalyst for you to be able to write fabulous copy and create compelling messaging that's based on the truth of your brand. Whenever I get to it, I always do a little George dance, and that's a Seinfeld reference, in case you're interested. Because for me, it's the key. Once you get to the DNA, you've got to the key of the brand. So.
And in bigger teams, I mean, it's got its own complexities. But Alex and I also do a lot of work with smaller teams where there's not a team, to be honest, especially owner-run businesses. Yeah. And when you talk about the brand, they give you a 2-pager, which is the variations of the logo and the color palette.
Oh, yeah.
And then you go, well, here's your brand. And when you talk about everything else, they think, well, it's not necessary. There's just me, right? Like, I don't need to develop all this other stuff. Just write the copy for the website. Erica, what's your problem?
Yeah, sure.
Have you come across that?
Never.
Never?
No, I'm kidding. No, I mean, that's why we hooked up recently, because you joined my elevator pitch workshop, which is a complimentary workshop, and it's for founder-led businesses, small businesses, 1 or 2 person or 3 person operated teams who need it most. Because even though I'm quoting Kantar, this great big global research agency, and yes, of course, you can look at Nike and Apple and Garmin and whoever and say, well, yeah, of course, it really brand strategy is for them. But no, it isn't. It's for people who have very limited resources, because what you want to be able to do is to say, I know exactly why I'm spending my precious resource on this, whatever it may be, because I've done the hard yards on the strategy. I teach at the Chartered Institute of Marketing, and they're very keen on frameworks at the Chartered Institute of Marketing. And I do like a framework. I've invented my own framework, so I'm a big fan of frameworks. But what I'm a big fan of is the freedom it gives you to be creative. So once you've done that framework, once you've done the thinking, it liberates you to be able to be confident about spending those hard-earned resources on marketing or a campaign or whatever it may well be. But going specifically to your question, Erica, it's whether you've got you're sitting around a table with the leadership team, or whether you're sitting with the owner, founder, sole trader. They have different roles. So your sole trader will have the sales hat, will have the accounting hat, will have the consulting hat, will have the product, all the different hats that we all wear as small businesses to make it work. And so really it's not so much that you need lots of different people, but you need different perspectives. How is this brand going to work, in terms of presenting at a local networking meeting? How can I compete with, the sort of London-based agencies? How can I deliver value without going down the cheap route? All these questions you can answer by developing a brand strategy. And again, I guess that's one of the reasons I wrote the book, was to put it into people's hands. It costs £15 from Amazon or even real bookshops. And within the book, there's a framework. You'll know this, Erica, framework for you to do your own workshop.
Yeah.
Because sole traders need more than anything. I'm a sole trader, and that was my decision when I started the business 16 years ago. I don't want a team. I've done all that, got the t-shirt, had the stress. So I'm one day I'm writing brand strategy, next day I'm doing a pitch, the next day I'm thinking about a web update, whatever it may well be. So I think it's more relevant to the small business than it is to the large business.
No, definitely.
So if you have a small business, let's say one piece of advice for a small business owner who has, those multiple hats, the accounting hat, the marketing hat, the sales hat, the product development hat, and they need to do a brand positioning, sorry. And they say to you, Bruce, but where do I start?
Well, I want to leap into song whenever anybody asks that question, which I won't do, because this is a very serious professional podcast. But it's a simple answer for me. The first question is, well, where are you headed? Where do you want to get to? Yeah. What's your vision for the business? Because if you don't know where you're going, then how do you know when you get there? If you don't know where you're going, how can you build a business that's going to help you get there? I don't know if you've ever tried to buy a train ticket from a train station without telling them where you're going. It's impossible. So first up, where are you headed? Yeah, and you don't need to write. This is not a mission statement. You don't need to write War and Peace. Simply say, the way I work with it is to say, okay, what is a transactional or a tangible description of success for you? I want to hit this much turnover in 5 years. I want to open another office in 5 years. I want to have 3 staff in 5 years. I want to, whatever it may well be. And then the second sentence is, what's the impact of that? Not on you, but on the people you serve. And once you've defined your vision, then you can then say, okay, what are the things that I have that can help me get there? What I call your drivers. And what are the things that will slow me down or even stop me? And I call those your barriers. And if you can work out the things that you can draw on, and then the things you have to deal with to change, then you're in a very good place to then start to think about, okay, or how can I create a business or a brand that's true to getting to that vision? So that's the I guess it's the first question, and it's the most important question, because without knowing where you're going, then nothing else makes sense.
No, exactly. And so many small business owners in particular, one-man bands, don't do that work, right? They just dive in and get going and come up with a logo and think everything's fine.
The trouble with brand strategy is it's not easy. It's easy to ask the questions, but the answers need thought.
Yeah.
You need to, and often it's not that small business owners or any business owners don't know their business. So when I started Brand Arrow back in 2009, I started it because I saw there was a problem, and I thought I could start a business that can solve that problem. And the problem that I saw was, whenever I asked a business owner, tell me one thing about your business. What's the most important thing about your business? That literally all say the same thing, which is, Bruce, it's not possible. It depends on the audience. It depends on the campaign. It depends on the product. It depends on the territory. And of course, all those things are important. All those things have their place. But ultimately, you should be able to rise above that minutiae to be able to define the point of your brand. And so what I learned in those interactions was, yes, clients know their business, but what they struggle with is knowing what is the most important. They don't know how to create a hierarchy. Yeah. The first most important thing, the second most important thing, third, fourth, and fifth. And that's what part of a brand strategy does, is helps you create a hierarchy. So you know exactly what's the first thing that's going to go on your homepage. You know exactly what the first slide in your deck is going to be. I call it the tyranny of the first, because there will always be a first thing, won't there? There cannot not be a first thing. I mean, you can try if you like, Erica, but there is always a first thing.
Always.
And so
even
that's
twins
fine.
have a first.
Pardon?
Even twins have a first.
Yes, indeed. And so I think going back to your original question, it's very tempting to get straight into things like logos and designs because they're not as hard to do. Yeah. You feel like you're making progress. They are tangible. They are things that you can say, which is very different from just thinking and putting words down on paper. So yeah, I think ultimately that's the best thing you can do as a small business is to invest some time, because the money is inconsequential if you're going to buy a book. Invest some time, maybe have a pal come along and be a sounding board for you. Yeah. And take the time just to plan it out. And then once you've planned it out, then you can do the fun stuff.
Oh, I love that.
I'd like to just go back to the first thing you said, because I thought it was really, really important about marketing. So brand strategy not being just in the part of marketing in the marketing department, that it's actually for the whole business, is across all of the different departments. Because I know Erica and I have faced challenges across departments before with, how do I say nicely?
Translation.
It's only the three of us. You can say what you like.
Yeah, no one else is listening.
Translation.
Translation. Yeah, let's say that. And I guess other departments buying into the strategy that you have created, even if you're creating it alongside, say, the CEO or the owner, there are often other departments or teams that struggle to, let's say, get behind the strategy, and then which ultimately leads to them making decisions or creating content, whether it could be something like a sales call script or something like that, that actually falls outside of the positioning that you've created. I was just wondering if you had any strategies or tactics for, let's say, a marketing team or head of marketing, if they may face that challenge in the future, or they have faced that, and how they can overcome that.
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. And I'll come to it. But the reality is that most people in most companies really don't like the marketing department. Sorry, it's just the reality. Why? Why? Because we're the best department. We're the guys we spend the money, we have the fun. We
have the fun. Alex did a karaoke song once, Bruce, about that, just about how much fun we were having in marketing. So I actually have it recorded, Alex. I'm going to find it.
Yeah, please do. But it's kind of like, you're looking out your hotel room across the road to another hotel, and there's a really good party going on. We have and the problem that most people have with marketing is that old adage, isn't it? I know 50% of my marketing works, I just don't know which 50%. That's if you've never heard that before, Alex, I don't know where you've been living for the last 40 years, but I think
Colombia.
Well, there you go. The point here is that it's a wonderful blend of creativity and strategy. And that's why we love marketing. And so it is hard to, the cause and effect is hard. And so the job of a marketing team, I believe, is to share and be open with the whole organization in terms of the progress that you're making. Yeah. So, and I'm going to come and I've got two responses to your specific question, but this is just a broader observation about the role, about the responsibility that marketing should have in helping the whole organization be part of that. I don't know if you ever walked down the corridor of a primary school, and if you look to your left and your right, the walls are covered. They're covered in projects. They're covered in calendars, school photographs. It's a cacophony. It's a smorgasbord of interest and excitement. That's what you want to do with marketing. You want to be able to post, and I don't mean on an intranet, but maybe in common spaces, maybe the kitchen or whatever, or dining room or lounge area. Just post what you're doing. Yeah. Create, really beautifully articulated representations of your campaign. Track their progress. Ask for comments. Yeah. And because it's interesting, it's good stuff. And so many of the team won't know what you're doing. Yeah, all they know is, they're off again doing something more interesting than my job. So that's just a general observation. But how to answer your specific question, if you want to avoid the idea of having to convince someone to do the stuff that you've just come up with from a marketing perspective, it's all about engagement. You either engage during or you engage after, in terms of the development of the marketing strategy or the campaigns or whatever it is that you might be doing. Engage during is, we talked about this, getting people around a table and harvesting their knowledge. Yeah. It doesn't have to be a formal leadership team. You don't even necessarily have to be asked to do it, but to say to the marketing, it'd be great to have a salesperson there. It'd be great to have someone from the product team. We're only going to fill in the gap. But that's all the time will take, but it will pay off beautifully in terms of A, the knowledge you get, and B, their willingness to participate in the campaign itself. Or you engage after. And that means not, this is the campaign, but to put together a way, maybe a workshop or some kind of interaction where you introduce, I'll talk from a brand strategy perspective, you introduce the brand strategy, yeah, and say, what we're going to do for the next hour, we're going to work with it. So let's take our values, yeah? So looking at the product suite, could you create a product that amplifies that value? Or taking, the key messages. Could you write a press release using the first 3 key messages, yeah? Get them to start to use whatever it might be. I'm using a brand strategy as an example. Get them to use it, yeah. Get them to sort of try it out. So it's not just you telling them stuff; they're engaging with it. And again, that will give a sense of ownership that will make the job of proselytizing. Yes, I can say that word. The marketing, or whatever it may well be across the organization.
I think one of the most successful rebrands that you and I have worked on, Alex, has been where the entire business was involved, in terms of, and it just so happened that it coincided with an office move and an office design. So it was really wonderful how the new building we were part of the design team. On the walls, there was actually, we got all the old marketing campaigns over the history of the company and framed. So that was all up. The values were in the communal area on the wall. There were images of the staff. And so and HR was great in working with us there in terms of getting that. So we had support from product, from HR, even IT was involved. And like, it was really a company-wide build, even though it was an owner-run business. So obviously the big tick box had to come from the top, but everyone had input. And that actually was so successful, right, Alex, in terms of...
Very successful, yeah.
And the ease of implementation, because we weren't up against fighting every single day. Everyone was excited. Everyone was involved. Everyone could see themselves in what we were designing. And that was really a lot of fun for us.
Yeah, it really to make it painless.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to say, like, we just in the interest of being open and honest so that others can listen, we've made the mistake before where we didn't take anyone on the journey with us when we've made a big creative decision, because we thought it'd be quicker in trying to get this particular project over the line, but it ended up being probably one of the most painful, drawn out projects we've ever done. We had to go back and do hundreds of reiterations of it, and it was it was horrible. It was like being dragged through mud backwards. It was terrible.
No, agreed. That was not a good move.
So I love what you were saying, Bruce, about I even quite like the idea of during and afterwards. Just purely that after I haven't really thought about that exercise that you're talking about, getting them to sort of do a practice run of implementing it in their business, whether it's a sales pitch, whether it's a PR article, or whether it's even an objection handling based on the values that you have versus the competitors you have. That's a really, really nice piece of advice. I like that. Thank you.
Going back to something you said there, Erica, about HR, brand strategy and HR, they're very closely associated. They work very closely together. There's that expression, isn't there? Culture eats strategy for breakfast. And if you don't tap into the culture, then with how you describe the values of your organization, then you will perish. Because values are so, I think of them as a benchmark for your team. So is it right that we're thinking about, opening an office in such and such a place, or this new product? Does it reflect, does it amplify our values? Is the new web design that we've just been presented, does it feel like it captures the values of the organization? So they act as a benchmark for your team, but they also act as a hallmark for your customers, because people will recognize you by how they experience you.
Yeah.
And so and working with the HR team is a great way of taking those values and sort of allowing them to be integrated and infiltrated into the organization. I once had a client in Germany, and I asked that if they had values, and I was told, yes, we have values. You'll find them in the kitchen, which I thought was a little odd, that they're just in the kitchen. But it turns out what he meant was that they were actually displayed in the kitchen. But sadly, I never found them because they had 5 kitchens. So I was always looking for these values.
Well, at least that's better than someone who tells you, yes, the values are on the website, right? And that's where that's the only place they exist.
Sure.
On this particular project with this client, we were so lucky in that the head of HR, the HR director, just got it.
Yeah.
We were involved in even down to writing the job ads to make sure the any advert for new jobs were on point with the brand. We developed an intranet site that brought in what everyone needed from there. I mean, we were just so lucky to have just like someone awesome who got it and helped us do the right thing, right?
Well, I mean, it's great, but you shouldn't have to have a champion, it's because it's in the company's own interest to do it. Because if you're aligned, you will save an awful lot of money, and a lot of time.
In my experience, having a champion gets you in the door. You do need someone who gets it, right? Otherwise, you're just fighting an uphill battle. So you shouldn't need one. I absolutely agree. But jeepers, does it make your life easy when you have one?
Well, I gave up that fight a while ago.
Did you?
I don't convince people. I don't try and convince people that brand strategy is going to help them.
Yeah, they either get it or they don't.
I mean, I'll talk about brand strategy. I'll talk about the benefits. I'll talk about how it can transform an organization. But I'm not a salesperson, and sometimes I wish I was, because I probably have a bigger business. But no, it delivers alignment. So that what you were talking about was absolutely spot on. So press release can be written because you're on point in terms of the messaging. It releases your team to be able to not to keep coming back to whoever saying, "Is this right? Is this right?" They know it's right. Because it's they're using the brand strategy or the materials that come from it. So
the other thing that sort of joint conversation of everyone, that upfront joint conversation does is uncovers interesting nuances. I did a workshop with the team a couple of weeks ago, just before Christmas, and a nuance arose that actually only one person knew, right? Was that the legals, so we were talking about sectors, what we do is trying to help people identify their niche. Who's your target client? What do they look like, etc. So that's our starting point. And everyone was fine. Everyone was on point. We were getting there until someone said, hold on, accept this. This particular segment is painful. They never pay. And they had a whole lot, but no one else. This is the finance department that knew that about this particular subsegment. Everyone else had been going off like this was, that's the one we want. But if they hadn't all gotten together to talk about it, you still would have had the whole business bringing in the wrong customer and this poor person in finance going, more of them. And it must be exactly the same in brand strategy, which is sort of, a higher step from the niching that I focus on. Is, if you bring everyone together, there'll be something uncovered that will, draw everyone together that people don't know.
Yeah, very much so. I always talk about, I'm either brought in by an enlightened founder who's ready to take the business to the next level, or I'm brought in with a board who wants to enlighten the founder.
Okay.
And there's a difference between those two.
Absolutely.
Less, which is less friction.
The way I work is I do this in 8 hours. So it's a full day's workshop, but it's a long time, but it's one day as opposed to 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 2 weeks. Yeah, it's one day, and you leave, with your brand strategy, with all the things that, from value proposition to your vision to your values, key messaging, etc. But within that 8 hours, there are times that are painful. Yeah, because it's hard, and you have making choices means that you end up with one thing, and what if you've got two things and they're really, really good, but you can't have two things, because if you have two things, Jane will pick this one and Bob will pick that one. Exactly. That's not a brand strategy. And so it's about wearing the pain, just being comfortable to saying, look, keep going, trust the process. We will get through this. Yeah. And this, period of bashing our heads together to get to the right vision, or whatever it may well be. And you're right, things get flushed out. Some of those things are really good. Some of those things aren't. Yeah. And the job of me as a facilitator is to be, I call myself the smiling assassin. Sometimes I just have to shut things down because I know it's not going to take us to a place that's going to deliver the value they need.
No, that's awesome.
So, maybe it's part of your IP, but can you give an overview of the brand Arrow and how it works and what the framework looks like?
I could do, but as long as you don't share it with anybody. I will do. Funny enough, how it started was I wrote my book back in 1819. And up to that point, I used the principles of the brand Arrow, but it wasn't articulated as it is now. And
so for anyone listening, the book is called What's the Point? So please do go and look for it.
There it is. What's your point?
What's your point? Go and look for it.
And just so happen to have the book available by you there for
put it this way, I have this book by my side the whole time, okay, with lots of markings in, because I use it. It didn't seem particularly nice, so I thought I'd get a nice fresh one, which is why. Anyway. So no, I'm writing the book, and I'm using my frame, and I think this is just too complicated. The framework's not easy to understand. How can I? So I just drew an arrow on a big piece of paper. I drew an arrow, and I thought, would an arrow work? Because arrows have points, and I like points because they stick into things. And so I just plotted the brand Arrow, and against my strategy, and it worked, and the rest is history, as they say. So how to describe it without showing it to you? Well, I don't know if you're familiar with what an arrow looks like.
I've seen a couple.
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of the brand arrow, is that everybody knows what an arrow looks like. And then the arrow has certain elements to it. It has the flight at the back, the feathers. And the job of the feathers is to keep it going in the right direction, to keep it going straight and true. So that's where we have the vision. Yeah. And then, of course, you've got to point your arrow somewhere. And where you're pointing it to is your audience. Yeah. And when we look at our audience, we do two things. We say, what are the different audiences? Maybe 2 or 3. My experience is the Pareto law seems always to work, that so 80% of your audience will be this sort of description, and 20% will be this. And then, not always the case, but very often there's a big clump, and then there's a couple of smaller ones. And then the second part of it is, well, what needs do they all share? What are the problems they all have? Because your job as the owner of the brand is to create a brand that's relevant to all your customers. Yeah, you don't have a brand for this audience, a brand for that audience, a brand. You have one brand, and that one brand has to be relevant across all the different audiences your brand engages with. Okay, because this is not marketing, this is not sales, this is brand strategy. So of course you can do a deep dive and target specific audiences with specific messages. Yeah, but that's not what brand strategy is. Brand strategy represents the whole organization against all your audiences. So there's the audience. And then you've got the stem of the arrow, haven't you? So you've looked at the feathers, you've looked at where it's pointed to, then you've got the stem. Now the stem's a long piece of real estate. Yeah, it's pretty, and it's probably the biggest bit of an arrow, isn't it? Is the stem. And that's where you house your key messaging. So how do you get to your key messaging? First of all, you write a value proposition. What's the problem we're solving? How do we solve that problem? What makes us different? Problem, singular. How do we solve that problem? Singular. What makes us different? Singular. Yeah. So you then have a wonderful framework to say, okay, now let's look at our features and our benefits. How do we deliver that solution? Here are our products. This is the stuff we do, features, and this is why people buy them. These are the benefits. Yeah. Once you've defined your features and your benefits, you then simply turn them the other way around. So you lead with a benefit, follow with a feature, because people buy benefits.
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't buy features. Yeah. Solve my problem, and tell me you're going to solve my problem. Then you've got me as an audience. So that's the stem of your arrow. And then finally, of course, what do you have? You have the point. Yeah, you have the head of the arrow. Yeah, the arrowhead, and that head contains the values, what I call the brand proposition, and then the brand positioning. So the positioning, that point, the very tip. There you go. The very tip of the arrow. That's your DNA. Yeah, that's the thing that's going to shape everything that you do and everything that your customer experiences. The brand proposition that follows it is kind of like your slogan. Is how do you articulate that in a way that's meaningful to your team and your customers? And then after that, you've got your value. So that is your that's a description of the brand arrow. And if you go to if you go to my website, thebrandarrow.com, you'll find a very nice video of the brand arrow, amongst other videos of me waxing lyrical.
I love it. I'm never going to look at an arrow the same again.
Good.
Well, Bruce, I think we could carry on talking about this forever, but it feels like this is a great time if anyone is listening and is interested in working with you or just chatting to you further. Other than buying your book or going to the website, how can they get hold of you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn. The website is it's almost as good as Erica and Alex's website, but I've got tons of content. You can sign up for free workshops, and that's at the Brand Arrow, thebrandarrow.com. Drop me a mail at bruce@thebrandarrow.com. I do a lot of stuff complementary stuff because I love it. And I am a big believer in brand strategy as a way of releasing particularly small businesses' resources. So more than happy to chat.
Awesome. Bruce, it has been such a pleasure as always. Loved having you on. Alex, what was your biggest takeaway today?
Erica, that's a very difficult question because there was a lot there. I'm actually going to say I really like what you said about keeping things straightforward, not simple. I think often that straightforward and simple can be confused. And by keeping things simple, you lose the nuance. And I think what marketing and product selling is all about is the nuance to what makes you stand out in the crowd. So that's the thing I think I was going to say, because I mean there's a lot to take away, and I'm going to choose that one.
Great. And what about you, Erica?
Well, that's unfair, Bruce, because I love your stuff, right? I think for me, it's a reminder, right? I know it, but I have to keep coming back, is that brand strategy is not part of marketing. I think that is like, it's just a reminder I have to keep reminding myself, because as marketer, you do get sucked in, right? And you end up being part of it, but actually it's bigger, and you need to include the other areas of the businesses to make sure that it's representative across the business, not just a marketing job, because we've had positive and negative experiences. If it's just a marketing job, you're probably going to have a really hard time getting it through the rest of the business. So that's a big one for me.
Can I say another one?
Go for it.
When you put the imagery in my mind of walking through a school and they've got all of the drawings and stuff of all of the kids they did, that was very vivid for me. And I'm guilty of not doing as much as I should in terms of communicating what we're doing, the successes we're having across the business. Erica is way better than I am. She's always the one who is pushing me to do that. But I think that is very, very important. And I've seen firsthand when I haven't done it, how it's kind of backfired on me sort of later on down the line. So get your drawings out, put them on the hallway.
Sure. Well, talking of walking, let me finish up with this kind of visual, which is the job of a brand strategy is to make the door to your business as wide open as possible. Yeah. So that customers can easily and seamlessly walk in to your business. Yeah. And what happens if you don't do a good job with your brand strategy, or you're using old thinking? Yeah. And how many of us have heard the expression, oh no, don't look at the website. What happens is you have this great big boulder that sits in that open door. And so you've got to say to your customer, breathe in, let's just squeeze past this boulder to get into the store, or worse, customers just walk right past you.
Yeah.
Because they don't see the value that you deliver, because you're not articulating it in a way that reflects the brand and the value it delivers. So, and that's the job of a brand strategy, make that door to your business as wide open as possible.
Love that. Well, thank you so much, Bruce. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks again, Alex. Always love chatting to you. Thanks to everyone who's listening, and I will see you all again soon.
That wraps up this episode of Giraffes Don't Eat Steak. Thanks for joining us. I hope you found value in our discussion and got some new ideas to apply to your own business. Tune in next week for another round of marketing insights and inspiration. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We appreciate you listening. Catch you next time on Giraffes Don't Eat Steak.